All right, folks, welcome back to the Land Fixer podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Logan Swanson. And today we have Philip Dukes with us. And Philip is a fellow land investor, but also he's a little qualified to discuss the topic of the day, which is going to be mental health and real estate investing. As usual, we'll get right into it. Philip, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are, what got you into real estate, and what you're looking like today?
Yeah, hey folks, my name's Philip Dukes. I'm based in, if you point to the state of Virginia, right in the middle of it. Been in the land flipping business. I would say I've dabbled in it for about 5 years, but taken the last two very seriously. Um, it's been a weird journey to get there. I started out as a CNA and just not really moving the needle forward in many ways, shapes, or form for a good long time. And I had that kind of in me that I wanted a little more. That involved me moving back to my hometown and just hitting every podcast there was on to increase wealth. Um, I found one by Mark Podolsky, and he was talking about how he flipped desert squares, and that kind of put me down a rabbit hole to Seth Williams with RE Tipster, and I jumped in. I was fortunate enough to land a job where I could save a sizable chunk of funds, and I still lived quite frugally. And yeah, a couple failure mailers that I learned a whole lot from. Kept it real basic, Google Voice, licked my own envelopes, and just fired around counties that I knew were cheaper in my own area, a couple hours away, and hit a big win early. Flipped a 27-acre piece, made 30,000 on it, and that was a great blessing because the proof of concept was definitely there after that. That's more money than I've ever seen at one time coming my way. Um, but then I started to realize that that one was more of an anomaly than what this business, at least for me, can truly be. But grinded away at it, probably flipped about 25 to 30 pieces, mostly in the state of Virginia, the southern part, couple in North Carolina and one in West Virginia. And I'm at the point in my growing pains where like I still work as a CNA essentially in a hospital, but I'm at the point now to where the growing pains might be where that has to take the back burner to doing land full time.
Yeah, it's a tough transition. And what when we spoke last time, you mentioned that kind of your process is exactly what I consider the ideal process right now in land, which is you do small targeted mailers, you work in a specific area over and over again, so you can be an expert there. You're still handwriting envelopes, and all those sort of simple markers that everybody, as they try to grow and scale, move away from, and it really limits their success. So they think they can just pour, and you can if you're really good at it. You just pour more money into mailers, and deals will come out. But in our with the current market, it's your success rate on huge bulk mailers is just through the floor right now. So I thought it was interesting. I had to learn a lot of expensive lessons to get right back to where you're operating right now, and that was a good thing to hear about. But tell us, what's a CNA, and you work in a hospital, but specifically around in the mental health area, right?
Yeah, I work in an acute psychiatric unit. So folks that maybe having an acute mental break, uh, you can have your more traditional psychiatric diseases, but we're also kind of essentially the community hub for people to dry out. Maybe you had just a bender of a weekend and you're a little psychotic. I come and babysit you for a few days. So, but you get lots of very different backgrounds of individuals. It can really affect anybody from all walks of life, all socioeconomic spots. It's you really don't know who's going to walk through those doors. So you get kind of an interesting perspective on what people's stressors are, what people's motivations are, and it is kind of a unique insight. But with that comes a lot of Even though we're an acute unit, we definitely try to spring shot the rehab side of it. So there's a lot of group therapy and a lot of uplifting things for the folks that are in there for that short period of time.
Yeah. And that our topic being mental health, I think most real estate investors are, just a few feet away from an acute mental breakdown at any given moment. And the reason I'm kind of interested in having this conversation is it's something that's, I don't think, really spoken about. You kind of have to have a certain level of crazy or mania in you to want to be an entrepreneur or get involved in real estate to begin with. So I think a lot of us are kind of walking in with some delusions of grandeur. We're all going to hit it big overnight or whatever else. And then especially if you're doing this for a couple years, some of the shininess kind of wears off, and then you're just stuck in a business that's not really operating the way you thought it would be or making you rich, and then all the anxiety and frustration begins to set in. Especially if you're like, in a situation like me where we went full time. We went full time because of the pandemic. I lost both my jobs, so we were kind of forced into to full time real estate investing. And if your sole income is relying on deeds transferring hands, man, that is a crazy anxiety ridden roller coaster. So, I in my life and in our career, my wife and I, we've experienced a lot of ups and downs, learning how to manage stress and frustration, temper expectations. You always have that $1 million deal on the horizon or that big thing that you're pursuing. Um, and for us, it's always, I guess, over the past probably year and a half, almost 2 years, when we really started focusing on mental health as far as being entrepreneurs. Um, we started to learn some, I don't know what you'd call them, strategies, I guess, for managing all those acute symptoms. So um, for our audience, if you feel like you're going crazy in real estate, one, I think you probably shut up a little crazy, and two, there's a good reason for it. So what do you think? Maybe let's start with like a specific symptom or manifestation, and for I think a lot of us, anxiety is probably chief among our symptoms, as it were. So what are some methods for kind of dealing with anxiety? Is it like framing or meditation or what do you think?
Gotcha. Now, I think there's a lot of possibility for some real anxious situations in this because it's a real simple concept at the beginning of the day. Buy a piece of land cheaper, sell it for more, pocket it. But then, as you know, and anyone that's done this for a little while, that's like step one, but the end goal is step 10. And that emotional up and down of, ooh, someone returned a call from my mailer. Ooh, I looked it up on the GIS site. This looks like it has road frontage. It might suit me. Called them. Oh my goodness, they're the sole owner. This is going to be easy through title. Maybe on step 4, they stop responding. You got
Hmm.
that purchase agreement out. You put all this mental energy in. I think a lot of kind of getting those waves kind of tempered is honestly accept that the first few are going to be an emotional roller coaster. But as with anything, as it is running, working out, once you get used to it a little more, it kind of dampens those highs and lows and kind of helps you manage those expectations. So honestly, I think putting in a lot of volume early just to kind of harden yourself to that because I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts. This business is great. I love it, but there's a lot of trench work that really is involved. It's not as glitzy as a 40-minute podcast of someone that's doing it. There's for some it might be a very simple transition, but I would say for your average individual, there's a lot of headaches and hurdles that go through it. Just kind of having the tenacity to bang through those is gonna be your best weapon. As far as other things to kind of damp or temper that anxiety, I'm a big believer, and I'll speak this till I'm blue in the face with anyone that'll listen to me at the hospital, is a healthy body equates to a healthy mind. Like get a routine in you, those basic things, drink your water, get your sunlight, get your heart beating real fast, get the blood flowing, get a sweat on, do those things a few times a week. It's really going to help with that mental state of those ups and downs. So solid daily habit foundation I would definitely throw to a key for success, because it's a grind. It really can be a grind in those early stages. So have that foundation. In the hospital, it's all about homeostasis. Everything needs to kind of even out. So find what a day to day is to where you can get that productivity in, but try to find that balance to it, because if it's a long game you're going for, it's very easy to burn out.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking on that, a lot of the science that's coming out now is fascinating. I mean, there's like, I think the more we understand the human body, the thinner that line becomes between mental health and physical health, because what is your brain other than a part of your body? So yeah, exercise, sleep, like the stuff that I preach to my kids and then I won't do myself, is key. And then also food, like the food you're putting in your body. All the science coming out recently about how closely related your emotions are to what's going on in your gut is really fascinating. Speaks to the American diet and a lot of things there. But yeah, that's really great. And then, one thing that I've done a lot in terms of dealing with anxiety is focusing on one acceptance you've mentioned is like the quicker I can accept whatever is going on, the better, right? So if somebody's not returning my phone calls, a seller or buyer or whatever, just accept it, move on, Don't let your brain kind of spiral or swirl or, wallow in some sort of morass or self-pity or anything like that. But two is like uh, perspective in terms of one, like you said, this is just how it goes. There's highs and lows, and there's headaches, and that's all part of it. And you're going to learn from each of those things. But what I found is my anxiety is really triggered most of the time in something that if it's out of my hands, okay, it's easier for me to let that go. Okay, some seller backed out. Okay, I'm easier at processing. I have no control over that. Doesn't, I'll just move on with my life. But what I can do is I'll kind of I'll look at my anxieties in terms of what I can control and then what I can't control. And those anxieties over things that I can control are actually good signs. It's telling me the deficiencies in either my knowledge or my business or my efforts or whatever it is. I found early on when I was, I guess even a better example, like 3 years ago, when our acquisitions were just out of control, we had hundreds of seller leads at any given time, and it's too much for me to keep up with. So every time I'd get a call, I started getting this anxiety because they'd be like, "Hey, this is so and so," and I wouldn't know who they were. I would have talked to them before, but I can't place their face with the parcel or what I had offered or any of this sort of stuff. Um, and in order to treat that anxiety, I like tripled down on my CRM and my systems, So I was like, okay, I'm only going to answer these calls when I'm in front of my computer, in front of my CRM, where I know I can type in their name and it'll pop up, and I'll have notes in there in such a way that I can quickly refresh myself on the property and the person and the things. And so that anxiety was a key indicator for me in what I was failing at, or what I really needed to improve. So there's kind of like useful anxiety and useless anxiety. So I think if you can, split the difference and put those into different baskets, you're much more likely to be able to successfully manage that. What are your thoughts on that?
No, definitely stressors are an indicator of something that needs your high alertness or that attention. It's a natural response to the body. Um, it's a survival mechanism. That stressor can be translated over to what you do for a living. Um, Again, I think to kind of get that sense of control, I think that's in a lot of ways the ones that can is what makes this business special. If you have that ability, however, you do get to that, because the one thing that land is that nothing else really has for it is the variables are just so different owners. Every piece of land is different. So being that it's so inefficient and so all over the place, at least how I do my business, I'm not a big infill lot guy. I like the raw acreage. Just accepting just the inefficiency of it in the grand scheme of things is definitely a way to kind of negate like this should be working, this should be going that way. If it, because without that inefficiency, this business is 10 times harder. It becomes you're wholesaling houses, you're more
Mhm.
on that model where the stress on that is a totally different animal in the sense that your mail volume, your follow-up volume, it's not it's not nearly as tricky as that. So kind of having that third person view, if you could pull yourself out of yourself and look at it and be okay, it's just a wild weird thing we come on, like accept it. And that's a good one for me. But yeah, those day-to-day stressors, they definitely can pile up, and having your system or having your method of processing that is good. One thing that I'm guilty of, like I say it, I need to do more of it, is I'm a big believer in the things that need to be done first. That's probably the one you're putting off the most. That's most likely the thing you're supposed to be doing. My personal life right now, I've put off the taxes a little bit. Like I've
Mm.
done it by myself for so long, and recently married, business has grown exponentially, a lot of land notes, just it's a lot more volume than me sitting down for a day or two on TurboTax and banging it through. um that's a big stressor for me, and
Mhm.
I feel that urge to push it off. But I know that if it's the one thing that's kind of the one thing you want to procrastinate on the most likely that's the thing you need to tackle. um
Yeah, what do they call that? Eating the frog or whatever. You
yep.
start if you start your day and you do the thing you don't want to do the most, the rest of the day just looks easier. Um, well, cool. Yeah, so I have a couple other topics that I definitely want to get to. So one for sure is we live, if you're a land investor and you're kind of in this Facebook group, podcast circle that a lot of us are running in, what you tend to see is everybody's wins and not their failures, or they'll kind of sandwich the struggle with the success that's at the end. And I think it can really give us all sort of a skewed perspective on what the day to day of this business looks like. I've had a lot of people come to me for whatever coaching, or even a while ago I did a series of phone calls just with everyday investors trying to be helpful for them. And what I kept getting was this same sort of like frustration where they're in Facebook groups, and one of the gurus or influencers or even just someone who's doing really well will, they'll post a picture and it's like, I closed $100,000 in profit today or whatever else. And then they go back and they look at their computer and they're like, I have two properties that I bought this year and it just doesn't make sense and I hate it and it's not going the way. So like there's that envy and that comparison, and kind of even worse is muddled in through all of this is there's that FOMO, that fear of missing out. So everybody's kind of posting, oh, I have this new service that I'm using. I'm text messaging. I'm doing ringless voicemail. I'm doing some other method or strategy, and you just give me a little bit of money, and you can learn about it. And then everybody thinks like, oh my gosh, the way I'm doing it is wrong, or I'm in a few months it's not going to work anymore, and my business is going to disappear out from under me. Um, and that anxiety, like that whole echo chamber and ecosystem, can cause so much frustration, but you kind of feel like you need to participate because that's where you're going to find the next little golden nugget of information or the perfect little trick that you needed or whatever else. So how do you synthesize and sort through all that data so that you can be like, I'm going to cherry pick what's useful and disregard what's not useful?
Yeah, that's a definite thing. If you're on the scrolling, I mean, you can definitely doom scroll just with land stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting so many different areas, so many different people from so many different backgrounds. um there's a quote, I think it's Peterson that did it, or I'll give the Cliff Notes version, is the only, and I write this on the board for my patients, is the only person to compare yourself to is yesterday's you. That's a mantra I really, really like. Everyone's coming from different spots in life, different backgrounds. It's your measure of success really needs to come with, are you comparing yourself to you a week ago, to 2 weeks ago, to 2 years ago? Because you can kind of, if you take that third person out again, where you're looking back at it, if you look at yourself over, okay, for me, for a 5 year timeline, started brand new, got my win. But if I could see that from that non-personal perspective, I mean, it's, I'm proud of it.
Hmm.
It's something that I can be proud of, the momentum and the business I've done. Now compared to your other folks out there, it pales in comparison, but that, try to eliminate that comparison only to what you can do. And that's not the easiest thing in the world to accomplish, but if you actively practice that, it really helps. Another thing, at least for me, this is very personal to my land business, is I like the adventuring of it. Like,
Hmm.
most of my properties are a few hours away. I like to go see them. I'll take some drone shots along with my land agent. I'll meet up with him, meet the farmers, gone hunting there before. Like, I try to really embrace the identity of it more than a keyboard individual, to where, you're flipping deeds. And there are a couple I've bought sight unseen, but if it's neat, I love land. I love being
Hmm.
outside. Like, my buddy and I were shooting 22s on a clear cut 40-acre piece a few years ago with four wheelers and his newborn, kayaks. I mean, I really try to personalize it, because then it really gives it my own identity. If you can find a way to really enjoy it and get a sense of adventure out of it, and again, that is easy if you're in New York buying Florida lots. I understand that's not necessarily the optimal way, but for me, on how I do my business, I really enjoy kind of making it my own personal story arc. I have stories from it, and I really enjoy that part of the business. I'm going to plug a kind of an old school land flipper that really goes under the radar, but I highly recommend his just his book, and it's more of a memoir. But EB Farmer, the um, he has a book, The Land Flipper. It's 70 pages. It's a great read, but it's more of that. And he was one of the first ones I really kind of connected with. And
Hmm.
it was his sense of, him and his father did it in Louisiana. And but they have so many stories. And when he wrote out those memoirs, I'm like, you're gonna look back on your life as like, he lived a life of adventure. And I kind of want to be more like that. That's fulfilling for me, and that keeps me from necessarily comparing myself to, I don't have a text message campaign and buying land in 82 states and outer space. And it kind of can narrow it down and make it my own, which I think is a good way of avoiding some of the comparisons you see. And it's super easy to do these days on the internet, and there's a lot of good information out there, but it's finding the stuff that's applicable to you is definitely a challenge.
Yeah, and I think kind of the way that I would synthesize that is, I love the idea of only comparing yourself to you. I mean, that's just kind of, I mean, the classics talked about, I mean, go back to ancient Greece and Rome. I mean, that's the same thing that's been taught pretty much throughout all of history. Um, and it's just so lost in our culture, right? Because bred into us now in the age of social media. It's always comparison. It's my worst moment compared to someone's best moment. So yeah, it's kind of like that. Um, so yeah, I really like the idea of, in in especially as a business owner, like you're not just comparing yourself in kind of a block like a feeling based way to your previous day. Like, if you have a good business, you have trackable metrics in your business, right? So I think what happens is, if people get frustrated with what they're doing, they listen to some sort of podcast, somebody mentions some new method, form, idea, CRM software, sales platform, whatever, um, and we start doubting what we're doing. So, and then we kind of feel the desire to branch off and just try something else. And what gets lost there is, if you're just bouncing, you're not really fulfilling that business owner role of take something and refine it, improve it. So it allows us to distract from what we really should be doing, which is the refining, tracking the metrics in our business, improving those things on a regular basis, and just trying to sidestep and to jump into something new. And the way that kind of linking those to what you were just saying is like gamifying the entire thing, I think is really healthy. Right. So instead of how can I upset or change what I'm doing and incorporate this new thing, it's like, okay, I have these trackable metrics, and how can I modify my life or my systems or processes to just do this better, refine this. For some people in real estate, it's like, okay, I'm in real estate because I want a lifestyle, um, and that lifestyle does like for me, I'm in real estate for lifestyle. I don't need to be rich. I really don't care about that. I mean, as long as I can provide for my family and I have my freedom, that's what I want, right? So then when I look at my businesses, I'm like, okay, well, what am I really trying to work for? 3 years ago, I was trying to be ultra rich for some reason. Like that was what my mindset was, and it did not bring me any happiness. It brought me a lot of frustration and really sadness. Um, so what I realized is what I actually wanted was freedom. So then I started engineering around freedom. So like, how can I make my business less frustrating, less time intensive, less emotionally up and down? And then so all those metrics in my business focused around that freedom part, and I kind of gamified it around how can I spend less time in the business or only doing the things that I really enjoy as much as possible, and that really helped. And then what I really liked about what you just said was like, how can I make this part of a bigger journey? Like I'm not a real estate investor. I'm Logan. Like this is a thing I participate in. And if I'm going to participate in this, it has to serve me in as many ways as possible. So just like you were saying, I try to, I can't visit most of our properties aren't even near me. So I don't visit most of my properties, but if I'm doing a development and we're running roads in, like last time I took my kids, I brought them out. I had, popped them in the skid steer. They were driving around the property and operating a skid. Probably very dangerous. Shouldn't have done that. But, I allowed it to be part of that story arc in my life. Um, and even down to like the frustrations we were just talking about, the things that make me anxious or scared or whatever. Now I try to think about it as like, oh, this is just an interesting challenge. And I enjoy challenging challenges. Um, that's almost all I engage in is really challenging things. So if I can look at these frustrations and anxious moments and reframe it and kind of gamify it into like, oh, this is like a game of Mario for me or something like that. And I'm on a boss or something. It allows me to change my perspective again, back to perspective. Um, and man, that's been huge for me. Like just that little phase shift from seeing problems as like dire and scary and changing into like, oh, this is one, it's part of the territory. Don't be a real estate investor if you don't want to run into a bunch of anxious, frustrating situations. So it's just part of it. I already accepted that. And two, how can I just view it as fun? And the more I can have that like playful mentality with every aspect of my life, the healthier my brain is. Because I have that crazy brain. And that leads me into my third big question for you, which is kind of that delusion of grandeur thing, right? So every real estate investor that I know, I'm sure there's exceptions, of course, but most of us come in thinking like, I'm going to get rich. I'm going to win big. I'm going to be in this new class. Maybe I want to buy the big house and cars and boats and never work for anyone ever again. Um, and I think a lot of that comes from this kind of naturally discontented spirit, right? I know when my wife and we worked like the 9 to 5 grind, it just killed us. Like we knew that wasn't our position. We knew that I could not spend the rest of my life reporting to somebody. It just sucked it right out of me. So when we got into real estate investing and we started getting, some level of success, I thought like, oh, I will be happy now. And what I found was the opposite. It's like the more opportunities I had ahead of me, the more different deals that I could chase kind of fueled that discontented nature that I had. And each time I would take a step, I would immediately take that step for granted and just wait for the next step. So it's like I kept thinking I would hit this point of comfort or happiness or whatever, and it would be a certain amount of money or a thing that I bought or a lifestyle or even that freedom, and I would just immediately take it for granted and just be on to the next, on to the next. So I think that's a pretty common trait for us as real estate investors is to have that sort of discontented nature. Um, and it is kind of a gift and a curse, right? Because that's what made us take the first step. But if we take the steps and then we get the thing and we're still not happy, what was it all for? You know?
It's definitely something that speaks to me a lot, that discontented nature. Another thing I kind of spew off as much as I can to folks that'll listen at work is, you got to earn your dopamine. I said cheap dopamine bad, earned dopamine great. And I mean, even with the land, those first couple successes, that dopamine hits just, it's nice. You're on cloud nine. The more you get into it and the more it becomes that job, that discontentedness can come in because you're not flooding your brain with that novelty. And that discontentedness, I think, has a little bit to do with that. Um, for the folks that are wired just to level up, I don't, it's as with any personality, there's going to be massive strengths and probably some deficits just due to that personality type. And if it's one that you're always trying to level up, and I lean into that, I feel the same. Um, it's trying to again get to that homeostasis. If you know your personality is way high in this, you have a couple deficiencies down here, might be time to try to tackle those deficiencies, not to get them back up here, but just to get them to where it's a little more rounded as an individual. One thing that I like to do is, I already touched on the physical exercise, but I live in the area that I've grown up in. I have family, I have brothers. I mean, I'm over there with the nephews, helping them. My brother just got a cow. That's fun. I try to, it goes into that freedom thing. It's land's always going to be there. Making the most of the time that you do have for just, I kind of look at it as moments. Big soccer player. I'm 36. I'm still out there with the college kids getting wrecked, but it's that it's that don't take it, you can take it as serious as you want, and being serious is very good and intentional, especially starting out. But once you get that a little bit of momentum, that grand perspective on things is, there's always going to be someone richer, there's always going to be someone more. And what the I am religious, and I think kind of chalking it up to, there's a higher power and a higher purpose. And as long as you're kind of openly seeking that throughout your life, I think you're going to find a little bit more of that contentment. It's all about you to a degree, because that's what gets the results. But once you kind of get a little bit, at least for me, and it sounds like you, freedom's my number one priority. I don't think I'm going to be any happier if there's, once you hit that kind of level of, all right, got, they call it, are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
No.
It's a healthcare term they use, where like you can't build off anything unless you have a foundation, and that foundation is food, air, water, and then it kind of pinnacles up. You can't get to that self-actualization until you lay those foundations. But when it comes to the money thing, I'm the same way. Once I have enough money to where you can throw money at problems and they go away, like I'm good. It's not a priority. That freedom is super valuable, but with that freedom, I think comes sometimes that responsibility of, like, what am I doing with it? If it's raising a family, that's so valuable. And I think I lean into that a lot from my upbringing. My dad worked for FedEx for 30 years, 60 hours a week, just backbreaking work. Six of us were all fed, clothed, educated. Like, I have nothing but respect for him. But that drive to not have to do that with my life, like, in a way, my dad set the example for that. So, um, getting back to just that going to the top in the comparison, it's, if you're wired that way, it's your gift and your curse. It is what it is to a degree. um I don't know.
Yeah, I think
That's been an age old question throughout history as well. So
yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to being intentional about identifying what you actually want. right? Because we're in a society that's rich with trying, like you're saying, dopamine. Everybody's trying to look towards the external to find some level of peace, comfort, happiness, and um, I think that when if you get to a certain point, right, where your bills are paid and your kids are fed and you have that freedom and you're looking in the mirror and you're like, I'm still not happy, or I'm still discontented, or I'm still frustrated, that's when I think it's really time to start focusing inwardly. For me, that took the form of what you've gone back to a few times here is like physical health. It's like, okay, well, when I was getting started, I was eating like crap. I was just all I did was work. That's like a single focus. And then got that a little under control. And then I was like, okay, I need to expand a little bit into my relationships. Like, how can I have healthy relationships with people and things like, and I started to get much more of a broad conception of who I am. And then I was able to start asking questions of purpose. It's like, well, my purpose, I know my purpose isn't to like, that's not a good purpose. My purpose isn't to get rich. And I think any pursuit that is strictly to get rich or making that the end will lead to a lot of sadness, frustration, emptiness, loneliness.
You're
Um,
not going to find the fulfillment per se.
right, right. So then that's when I started thinking, okay, well, what does fulfill me? And I started, more in depth questions and discovering who I am. And I found that, there are certain things that really drive me and make me happy that don't come from real estate. And then I was able to place real estate where it should be. It's like a vehicle. It's a vehicle that I get in each day to get me to where I want to go. And that where I want to go is not defined by the real estate itself. So if I had to, say the land market goes upside down tomorrow, well, then I'm just going to get in a different vehicle. And the place that I'm heading is, taking care of myself, taking care of my people, taking care of, finding my purpose or chasing my purpose. And then you start to look at what you have just as assets for the purpose. So it's like, I think I was sharing with you before, I really like, I've created this skill set around land, but I don't find a lot of fulfillment in flipping land or funding land or developing land. It's fun. I can gamify it, but I don't feel like it's an end purpose. What does really motivate me is the idea of building affordable housing for my community. So I'm like, oh, well, I have a skill set that could actually really tie into that. Now I have a network of people that I know that could really help me, take it from A to B. Then I'm able to say like, okay, well, all of this vehicle that I'm driving each day is just getting me closer to that purpose, and maybe that changes. But as long as I'm looking at some bigger, grander view that isn't just about money in my pocket or whatever else,
I I a
it just
100% relate. Like I have this kind of pipe dream myself. If I'm very stable and steady with what I know, being my skill background is healthcare, is I would love to get a 20-acre parcel and throw 15 mobile homes, pimp them out, handicap style. Maybe have your little healthcare quarters there. Ride the golf cart. Like have a little assisted living facility that's not your little cubicle in a building. I mean, I feel the same way with the land, that it serves the purpose for what it is right now, and that's strictly creating wealth. I try to make it as fun as I can with what I have during that time. I mean, you're going to be spending hours in it. It's a big part of your life. I try to capture the fun moments, and I've had quite a few, and I really enjoy those. But I don't necessarily know it's going to be something that I'm 60 years old and still flipping. But
yeah.
for this time, it might it creates the fundage, the wealth, the know-how, the knowledge to maybe evolve from there. And I do think I have that drive to that. There's going to be some point in some chapter to where it's not that I'm just building the digits in the bank account. It's what dent in the world am I going to put for the little time I do have here. I definitely can relate to that. Another big prime motivator for me as an end goal is talking to this freedom is recently married, want to start, putting my kids out in the world. Like I really want to enable them to have that freedom by homeschooling, by not having that tie down of the 9 to 5. So yeah, it's definitely a journey, but being grateful for the moments in that journey, I think, can really kind of give you a little extra push to keep grinding through. And
Yeah.
it's going to be a unique one for everybody. Everyone's going to have completely different story on how their investing journey goes, and embrace the uniqueness of what is your own. I'm not Seth Williams. I'm not Mark Podolsky. I'm Phil. I live in Virginia. Like, I have my little spot, and just own what's yours and be proud of it. And the one person you compare it to is you. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so that gratitude piece at the end, I mean, that could be its own hour-long
oh
conversation.
yeah,
I always thought gratitude was like this passive feeling that you had. And like, no, gratitude's a very active endeavor. If you can, goes back to perspective. You're like, if I can wake up every morning and be grateful for the hand, the fingers on my hands and my kids sleeping in their bed, and even be grateful for the stuff that I need to fix on my house because I enjoy fixing stuff on my,
yep,
if I can start with just framing and getting my perspective right before I head into the day, like it's a
yep.
night and day difference.
And my
Um,
wife has been instrumental in kind of letting me kind of see that side of the world. She's very, very optimistic and always sees the beauty in everything. And I think I'm more on that melancholic, a little sarcastic, jaded. She's a good balance for me. I'm very blessed to have her as a partner. But yeah, just those moments. I really think you finding those moments. One of our biggest connecting things was this, like, yeah, I flipped dirt. And she's like, what? And I was like, you want to mail with me one weekend? And we grinded out like 600 offers. And the funny thing is, I went to visit my brother in Alaska. During that time, I hit the right timing for the right thing. And we got what, 5 deals, about 80 acres worth. It was probably the best mailer I've ever had. So it's one of those moments. Like, I'm gonna put that in my little, that's in my memoir. That's my own thing. That's my own personal story. That's me. That's my journey. That no one's gonna understand, and I don't need to compare it to anyone else's. So just
yeah,
kind of taking that ownership of what's yours and just improving on it. The rest you can learn from them for sure, man. I'll eat up some podcasts on new strategies or mindsets. If I get one or two things from them, it's an asset to me. But they're on theirs, you're on yours. And kind of just having that simplistic mindset, I really think is helpful for at least what I do. Um, but all of that being said, a caveat for anyone just starting, I'm going to echo probably the 700 other podcasts out there. Mail, mail, and mail some more until you get people calling back. Talk to those people, figure out what the real prices are, and mail some more. It's all about mailing. Worry about selling it when you buy something. Just mail.
hmm,
Um,
yep,
if anyone hears that's new and really wants to do that, just get the offers out. It's all about offers.
awesome. Well, Cliff Notes. So I think we said acceptance is big. Accept the reality. Perspective. Make sure you have a good perspective. Physical health is key. And then I like gamifying. I think gamifying really takes um, everything away from being a chore into being a fun activity. And then eh, don't define yourself by your job. That is a big issue, I think, especially when it's it's a unique thing we do. So it's rare for you to encounter somebody in the wild who does what you do. So it's easy to kind of make it put it on like it's a suit jacket or something and wear it around and try to make it part of your identity. And it's a vehicle. You're driving it, you park it, you get out, and you go on with your life. Well, Philip, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, do you want to share any sort of email or Facebook, or what's the best way to talk to you?
Yeah, my email, if you want, is philip1l.dukes1988 at gmail. Kept the same one, haven't needed to change it. I'm also on Facebook. If you're all smart people. If you look up Philip Dukes, I'm sure you'll find me. I'm in Virginia. So, but yeah, no, I do like the land flippers though. It does have a nice culture overall, even with all the stuff on the internet. Everyone's usually looking out for each other compared to other maybe real estate investing things. It's not nearly as cutthroat, and it's a good group to get in if you're thinking about it or keep going with it. So, been a blessing in my life for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on today, Philip. Folks, reminder, if you want to buy land, go to www.primelandexchange.com. If you need help funding deals, go to landpartnerfunding.com. Or if you need to get in touch with me for any reason, you can reach me at thelandfixer@gmail.com. Philip, again, thank you for being on today, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, cheers.